Welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here today because we are going to fundamentally shift how you approach your very next pitch. We're breaking down a brilliant executive summary on the problem-first selling strategy. And honestly, it's going to completely rewire the way you think about sales, communication, and just human psychology in general. Get ready because these insights are about to hand you a completely new playbook.
Okay, let's dive right into this by confronting a reality that pretty much anyone who has ever tried to sell an idea, a product, or a service has faced at some point. Why do most pitches just fail? I want you to think about those frustrating moments where you might be losing sales or facing incredibly high resistance from your prospects. You've got a great product, you know for a fact it works, yet the person sitting across the table is completely checked out. So why exactly does that happen?
Well, the fatal error most people make happens right out of the gate. It's making the first sale way too soon. It's that classic trap of aggressively pitching a product, a service, or an opportunity immediately. Coming out swinging right from the opening bell before doing any of the actual necessary groundwork. So that brings us to section 1, the big sales mistake, which is premature pitching. Here is the underlying logic. The massive mistake here is pitching without a recognized problem. Think about it directly from the prospect's perspective for a second. When people do not believe they actually have a problem, they have absolutely zero reason to buy a solution. If they don't see the issue, your perfectly crafted, beautifully polished product pitch, it falls on entirely deaf ears. So, the crucial point is section 2, the real first sale. And guys, this is a major paradigm shift. Like I said, this is a massive paradigm shift. The first sale is never getting a customer to purchase. Let me repeat that because it's that important. The first sale is not the purchase. The true first sale is simply getting the customer to understand the problem they already have. Your job isn't to push a product. Your job is to help the prospect clearly, undeniably recognize their own underlying issue. You literally have to sell them on the reality of their own problem before you can even think about selling them a solution. Which leads right into section 3. Bridging the gap, or reframing the position. And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic at play here. On one side, you have where the prospect currently is, right? Just living with an unrecognized problem. On the exact opposite side, you have where they actually want to be, their desired outcome. Now, the space between these 2 points, that is the gap. And it is absolutely crucial to highlight this space. Because once a prospect clearly sees this gaping hole between their current reality and their ultimate goal, their entire perspective just completely shifts. And when that perspective shifts, something really beautiful happens. Because once that gap is seen, your product naturally, almost effortlessly, becomes the bridge. Notice how the whole tone of the interaction completely changes here. Instead of forcing or convincing or begging them to buy, you're simply offering the solution to a problem they now vividly recognize. It instantly sucks all the emotional pressure right out of the room. It significantly lowers their resistance and creates a sales process that feels entirely natural and organic. So how do we actually do this? Let's hit section 4, 3 practical steps. This is your execution playbook. The whole strategy breaks down into 3 concrete, highly actionable steps. First up, you lead with education. Second, you position your offer as the answer. And third, you remove the pressure. Let's look at exactly how each of these phases works in real time. Let's move to and see how this builds our very first step, leading with education. Look, before you even whisper the name of your product, you absolutely must teach your prospects about the problem. And you can do this in a bunch of ways, by using stories, providing really clear examples, asking probing questions, citing compelling statistics, or using hard-hitting demonstrations. When a person discovers the problem on their own terms, they become infinitely more receptive to actually hearing about a solution. Okay, so once that problem is firmly established, we move right to step 2. Instead of going in with some aggressive, buy my product pitch, you transition completely naturally by explaining how your product solves the specific challenge you literally just helped them uncover. This is the ultimate difference between doing it the wrong, emotionally pressured way and the right, totally logical way. You're positioning your offer as the direct, undeniable answer to their newly discovered challenge. Honestly, the sale suddenly just becomes an exercise in pure logic. And that leads perfectly into step 3, remove the pressure by focusing on helping instead of selling. When your primary goal is to educate first and sell second, the entire dynamic changes. The prospect feels understood rather than persuaded. This builds immense trust and skyrockets your credibility. You stop being a stereotypical salesperson and you actually become a trusted guide, which results in way more willing buyers who genuinely appreciate your expertise. All right, let's wrap this all up with Section 5, the ultimate takeaway. This is the final lesson. Now, what's really interesting about this is how perfectly it distills human behavior. At the end of the day, people rarely just buy products. What they actually buy are solutions to problems they understand. So make your very first sale helping them recognize that problem. Because once they do, your offer completely stops being a pitch and it simply becomes the obvious no-brainer solution. So I want to leave you with a quick thought to consider before your very next client interaction. Take a long, hard look at your presentation materials, look at your talking points, and ask yourself this. In your next pitch, are you aggressively selling your product or are you strategically selling their problem? Master the latter, and I promise you, everything else will just fall right into place. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this transforms your approach entirely.